So glad you're streaming with us. Well, a judge just lifted the sweeping gag order ahead of Bryan Kohberger's sentencing for the stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. The documents are set to remain sealed until his sentencing next week. It comes after Kohberger officially entered a guilty plea as part of a deal that he accepted so he wouldn't have to move forward with a trial. Trial attorney and former felony prosecutor Eric Faddis joins me now for more. So, Eric, what could be in these documents you think that are currently sealed?
Oh, sure, Kara. So these are witness lists. They're exhibit lists, which could detail the actual pieces of evidence that both sides intended to introduce at trial. My understanding is there might be some documents sealed that pertain to alleged alternative suspects. We know that that's kind of a foregone conclusion now because he's pled guilty and admitted to doing this. But we could learn more information about kind of the how and why. And I think that's what's on everybody's minds, certainly on the minds of the community in Moscow, Idaho.
So, what are you expecting to happen during sentencing next week?
Yeah, so sentencing, it is really going to be, the judge does not have much discretion, really no discretion. The sentence is going to be life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, the victims' families will likely get an opportunity to speak, to give input, to give what are called victim impact statements, to really detail how this horrendous incident has impacted their lives and the loss of their loved ones, and talk about those things. So I imagine it'll be very emotional, very compelling, and a lot of folks will be watching.
All right. Stay tuned, Eric. Thank you.
All right, welcome back. After Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, the judge today lifting a sweeping gag order that has shrouded this case in secrecy for more than 2 years. However, all of the documents pertaining to this case that are sealed will remain sealed, at least for now. That's according to the judge, who also said he will assess those documents with the legal teams after sentencing. That takes place next week on July 23rd, could spill over into the 24th, depending on how many victims' families choose to give those very important impact statements. So joining me for more on this and what this means legally is the legal analyst and founding partner at Varner Faddis Elite Legal LLC, Eric Faddis. Thank you for being here with us. So let's jump in here. First of all, the initial reaction, if you've been following this case, to the judge vacating this non-dissemination order, which essentially means those involved in the case can speak if they want to, although some are already saying they're going to wait till sentencing, but also the decision to keep these documents under seal, at least for now.
Yeah, Kina, I think there is a massive public interest in learning more about what happened, why it happened, what were the motivations here, what were some of the actions Kohberger took leading up to this? Was he stalking these people? These are all kind of open questions, or at least we don't have a ton of detail on them. So I think the judge is moving in the direction of sort of the public's interest in knowing this information, as well as the victims' families' interests and that community. They want to know more about what happened to the sealing. I think it sounds like from the judge that those documents may be unsealed as the weeks and months go by. And so I think we're going to learn a lot more kind of incrementally over time.
Oh, so you think that it's not also like the judge said they would go through the newest documents first and sort of work their way down. And so you think that as they go through each document, they'll sort of release them so it'll be a bit more of a trickle effect as opposed to releasing all of them in one lump sum?
That was my impression from listening to the judge during the hearing. There are a ton of documents in this case, probably thousands. And so it's going to take some time to go over those. They want to protect the privacy interests of the victims and the victims' families. There are things like social security numbers, addresses, those things have to be redacted. But that being said, I think we're going to learn a lot from these documents. There are witness lists, there are exhibit lists. Those really detail the items of evidence that each side was intending on introducing at trial. On top of that, there is likely mitigation information, mental health evaluations done on Kohberger and what they revealed. And so, yes, I think over time we're going to learn more, but it's going to be a bit of a trickle effect, as you said.
Yeah, I think there's some cell phone records to be learned as well. What about the idea here that law enforcement still might not speak until after sentencing?
That part doesn't make a ton of sense to me. The sentencing is a foregone conclusion. He's getting life without parole in prison, no matter what, and it doesn't matter if the public gets information before that or after that. I'm not entirely sure why the DA is being so tight-lipped about it, especially now that he's secured this plea. So, but that's their choice. Well, I'll be interested to see whether the defense, however, decides to reveal some public information, some things that could be mitigating in the eyes of the defense, or at least give a more holistic picture, further explain who this person was, what was going on in his life when he chose to commit these heinous murders.
Oh, that's an interesting thought there as well. Eric Faddis, thank you for being on with us.
Good to be with you.
Also, after Bryan Kohberger pled guilty to the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, the judge today lifting a sweeping gag order that has shrouded this case in secrecy for more than 2 years. However, all the documents that are sealed will remain sealed, at least for now. That's according to the judge. And he also said that he will assess the documents with the legal teams after sentencing. That takes place next week on July 23rd. Could spill over into the 24th, depending on how many victims' families choose to give those very important impact statements. For more, I want to bring in legal analyst and founding partner at Varner Faddis Elite Legal LLC, Eric Faddis. Thank you for being here with us. So, first of all, your initial reaction here to the judge vacating this non-dissemination order. Many people thought it might happen at the change of plea. It didn't. Then they thought maybe they wait till sentencing, but to lift it almost right before sentencing, but keep those documents under lock and seal is an interesting move.
Yeah, kind of curious timing. I mean, a lot of people think this is a long time coming. They were waiting for this information. In fact, an interesting development, the Goncalves family, one of the victims' families, have spoken out since this ruling and said, hey, this should have happened a while ago. The victims' families need all of the information about the case so they can adequately address and give their victim impact statements at sentencing.
Well, and the Gonzalez family has been very upset about the plea deal. They've made that very, very clear. And to your point, they wanted some of this information so that they could use it during their victim impact statements. So it sounds like unless someone decides to do an interview to speak out publicly, they're not going to be able to get information that they want from some of these sealed documents.
I think that's exactly right. And it's kind of a disservice in some people's eyes to the victims' families. That family came out and said that they thought the gag order was actually put in place to sort of protect the prosecution, who they believe mishandled this case. And so, certainly some outrage as a result of this ruling and sort of withholding the information for an extended period of time. I'm not sure when we're going to see and all of this information is going to be disclosed, although the judge indicated that it might happen sort of intermittently over the course of weeks or months.
Right, as a bit of a trickle, if they start with the most recent filings and go back to the beginning, which some of those beginning ones, frankly, might be the most interesting. Also notable here that we've Moscow police putting out a press release saying the volume of investigative records is substantial. They have to review them, and essentially they're going to create a website. I mean, that's how many records we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, we're talking thousands and thousands. This was a massive undertaking, a huge investigation, multiple law enforcement agencies involved. And so it's going to be a Herculean effort to really get these to people. Sensitive private information will need to be redacted, including information that is just sort of too private and relates to the victims, things like phone numbers, social security numbers, all of that. So it's going to take some time, but it sounds like we're going in the right direction in terms of the public's interest in learning about sort of how this all happened and hopefully why.
The public interest and the right to know what's going on in their community. Eric Faddis, thank you for being here with us.